I'm excited to introduce Jose because I interviewed Jose a long time ago and I wasn't familiar with his story and it stunned me. I don't know if you realize this, Jose, but I was like silent. I normally have a lot of questions, but I got a lot of personal healing from your story because your story has this forgiveness with an abusive parent. And it's so profoundly beautiful. But Jose is an artist, international speaker, and co-founder of Immersion. He has spent close to 2 decades integrating his near-death experience, sharing his insight through his art and powerful inner immersion modality. He was an electrical engineer for most of his life, with no pedigree in art before this. And in 2004, he began creating art as a meditative tool, and his work has exhibited in galleries across the US. And his team is now training licensed mental health professionals and addiction professionals to create breakthroughs and build trust and change in these vulnerable populations in addiction recovery and high trauma professions. And he lives in British Columbia with his wife. So welcome, Jose, and thank you for the work that you do. Our first speaker talked about an overdose with heroin. And so, his NDE helped him from that experience. But tell us just a little bit of what you're doing now. And then if you could just go back to who you were before your NDE.
Yeah, and thank you for that beautiful introduction. It's really an honor to be here. And after listening to David, I know you're going to touch a lot of lives in a good way, and that's the idea. So what I'm doing now is I've been very blessed since my NDE, and I've been always trying to find a reason why. Why did I have this experience? Why did I come back? Why? I'm not special. I'm not better than anyone. I'm not anything different. So what, why? And I contemplated that thought for a long time. And in my experience, my NDE, I had been exposed to color, and I was kind of given what I would call a blueprint to painting. And like Tricia said, I never painted before, but it had given me like a how. So I decided one day, maybe the reason I came back was to paint, and then paint what I saw when I was dead, and then use that in meditations. So that was the premise and the underpinnings of how we started this program. So we designed a mindfulness practice that was based on, it was art-based, there's breath work, there's meditation, there's, eye movement, there's a lot of different functionalities to it. And one of the more important ingredients is storytelling. So I would share my story. And storytelling to me is cultural. It's also very important. It's a way of learning. It's a way of teaching others what I've been through. Because life is an experience, and the best teacher is that experience. So if I had an experience of something, I could say to someone, this is a good reason for you not to do this, because I had an experience with it and it was like this. But anyway, I started working in yoga studios with this program, thinking it was for wellness and people, that were thinking about being healthy and staying healthy and things like that. And the first thing that happened was it started to open people up, and they would come to me after we finished the program and say, Jose, I need to talk to you. So that led to one-on-ones, and in that one-on-one, they would tell me everything that was going on in their life. And I'm not a mental health professional, so I found that very profound. I said, something is touching these people in a way that's allowing them to let go. Now, everyone that has had an experience with an NDE, that has had that experience, you have that moment where you let go. I had a moment when I was dying where I had to say it was okay to die. And I had to let go of everything that I love and everything that I know. And that was the most difficult moment of my life to date. Having to have that awareness that I'm not going to see anybody that I love anymore. I'm not going to be able to see my home, see a tree, see the sky, see everything I love. And that was going to go away. So with that said, the experience taught people without speaking to that how to let go, how to accept things. There's a lot of things that happen to us that are very difficult. There's a lot of stuff that in life that is not easy. There are hard pills to swallow, but when we let go and we accept, it allows us to move on. And I think that's what I began to notice right away with the program. It was allowing people to let go of a lot of that stuff that David was even talking about, a lot of that trauma, that stuff that gets like built into us and that we tend to disguise and hide, and we hide it in so many different ways. And ultimately, it teaches people how to forgive. And I find that forgiveness for me was the magic bullet of my experience, because it was about forgiving my dad. Trisha alluded to the experience I had with him. It was a very difficult one, but it was also about forgiving myself. And the minute I was able to forgive myself, it was like I was set free. The minute you're free, then you're open to every possibility. And that's kind of like what happened to me. It allowed us to create this program, and we started working in rehab centers after that. And it has a tremendous success with rehab. We've been really blessed. We've just been picked up by a medical company, Assertive Health, and we're going to become their behavioral arm. So if you could imagine in mental health, the NDE becoming an underpinning or a structure that's going to help people to let go, deal with their traumas, and move on and live a better, happier, fuller life. And I think that's the goal of most people that have had an NDE, to serve in a certain way, to bring something back, to give back something. But you know, I've been doing this since 2008, working with rehab centers and stuff. Now we're being tasked to work with the vulnerable sector and some inner city communities. We're bringing the program in hopefully a much bigger scale than we were. And like Tricia said, we are training mental health professionals. You have to have an understanding of that to be able to do this, because we do open up in a way that we need someone that has experience in helping guide us at that point. But it's a beautiful thing. It's like an NDE. An NDE, the thought of dying is very traumatic. It was very traumatic to me, that awareness that I was going to die. But knowing after the experience, what I experienced was so beautiful, so tender, so kind, so loving. That's what we come back with.
Speaking of that, Jose, could you go back and just explain a little bit about what your life was like before the NDE and maybe your relationship with your family and so forth? And then how, just briefly for the people who don't know about your NDE or maybe haven't heard it, what happened and how you have healed?
Yeah, that's a good question, and that's a lot of questions in one. But I'll try to unpack it a little bit. But I grew up in the South Bronx. I grew up in the hood. I was a street kid, and my father is Latino, but he's also First Nation, and he had a lot of struggles with his identity. And he was an alcoholic, and so we grew up in a very difficult environment. He was always beating up on my mother, and we were always being abused, and we had a very difficult life. So the street became our go-to. That's where we would get out of the house. Everybody wanted to get out. And it wasn't only me, it was a lot of people in that community, in that space. We want to get out. We want to leave that space. We want to get out of even that community. But I was blessed in a way that I was, when I was in school, I wasn't challenged with learning. It wasn't very difficult for me to learn. So I did pretty well. I got in a college-bound program. In South Bronx, they started a college-bound program. They picked us. There were 100 kids that were in this pilot program, and still in existence today. And so most of us went to university, and we did our thing. And I became, because of my mother and my father, very practical, very a critical thinker. Let's put it that way. I thought about science and math as the Bible, as the Holy Ghost, as everything that mattered. My mother was Catholic, so her mindset was go to church and God is there. My father was First Nation. His mind is look out the window, creators everywhere. So I kind of said, let me just get out of that slippery slope and stay in the middle. And my God became math and science. So that gives you a bit of a understanding of where I was. And growing up in the South Bronx when I was growing up, it was like a war zone. Buildings were being burned and empty. You know, there was a lot of change happening. We had this phenomenon called the white flight at that time. And Latinos and the Blacks were moving in, and the white people were all moving out, going more to the suburbs and stuff. And there was a lot of transition. So I grew up in an environment that was very transient. There was no stability. And then drugs were going rampant. It was the time of, the hippie era was all emerging all at the same time. All this was going on, Black Power, everything was happening at the same time. And for a young person growing up in that environment, it's very confusing. And then in the house that you're in, under the circumstances that you're living, it makes it more difficult. You know, you got an abusive dad. I mean, it's hard to explain how that impacts you. It kind of stays with you as you grow up. You hold on to that. So that was one of my challenges when I was dying. As I got older, I became very materialistic. I was able to become an engineer, and then I became very materialistic. And that was the barometer. That was the measuring stick for how valued I was as a man. That made me more of a man. The more stuff I had, the more I had all these material things, the more people would look at me with respect. And that was a big word for us, respect. And so it was an illusion. And I kept living that illusion until one day at work, I was in a bucket truck and I got injured. I broke some ribs. And they sent me to the ER. And this was the changer of my life. They gave me a medication that unfortunately I was allergic to, or fortunately, depends how we look at it, right? I look at it as a fortunate event now. When it first happened, it was unfortunate. So they gave me some medication I was allergic to, and I had an allergic reaction, and my lungs began to shut down. And I wound up in another emergency room on another day, unable to breathe. And that was the beginning of my journey. So if I could share a little bit of that journey, it might put everything into perspective. So here I am in the hospital. I'm in the South Bronx, so I think I'm this tough, macho guy. I got all this, I managed to survive the South Bronx. I could survive anything. And my father's perspective, being First Nation, is that the men are the life takers. So that means that we provide for the family, we protect the family, we do all that. And he had that kind of like in steroids. So his perception of it was distorted. And what he did was he taught us to be empty. We couldn't cry, we couldn't express our emotions. I never hugged my dad in life. And I never told him I loved him. And those were things that were not manly. Those are things that men don't do in his mind. So we couldn't do it. In fact, In our culture, we have long hair. He had our hair really short. He was trying to disguise the fact that he was First Nation. He was ashamed of it. So here I am in the hospital. I'm being, I remember they said, we're gonna admit you're struggling to breathe. I remember telling my wife at the time, my son, you guys go home, I'm gonna be fine. This is just a little hiccup. We're always fine. We always overcome. We always beat these things. But this time I wasn't gonna beat it. And I remember the nurse telling me, you have a little button, a call button there on that bed. If you need to push that, go ahead. And I'll be here in about a minute. And I'm thinking as she's telling me that, she's insane. I'm never going to push that button. I'll never let myself push that button. And incredibly enough, as she left the room, I was already thinking of pushing that button. Then my ego got in the way and started saying, no, you're not going to push that button. You're going to be fine. Take a deep breath, relax. You're a guy. You could do this. You've been through a lot worse. You've seen a lot worse. And I had that debate for about 45 minutes, 50 minutes. So I finally pushed the button. When I pushed this button, there's a clock right in front of me. I'm facing the door and there's a clock right on top of it. So I'm looking at it, tick, tick, tick. And each second felt like an eternity. And it took about 1 minute for that nurse to get into the room. She opened the door, she looked at me, she didn't say a word, she just hit the cold blue. And I'm looking at her and I'm understanding what she just did. She hit the cold blue. All of a sudden you hear this cold blue. And it says the room. And I knew it was me. And I'm thinking, that can't be possible. Why did she just do that? So my experience of dying, because I was completely aware, I'm going to share some of that with you, what I felt emotionally, because it's the emotional skin that is impacted the most by the experience, because our spiritual body is in perfection. So the first thing that happens is everybody starts running into this room, a crash team. And I'm trying to hold on to my sheet. And being a man and being so tough and supposed to be so like everything I thought I was, I should have been able to hold on to that sheet, but I was so weak that they just peeled it off and stripped me down, and I felt shame. That was my first experience. I felt ashamed, like helpless. I hadn't had that experience before. And it made me feel weak. Next thing I know, and I'm going to give you the short version, I started thinking about my family and what was going to happen to them if something happened to me. They weren't ready. I didn't have anything in place. I had nothing ready, So I became very concerned about how they were going to survive if something happened to me. I got this emotional knot in my chest as I was thinking about them, because then that thought of never seeing them again came, and that came. It was like getting hit by a thunderbolt. That awareness of, oh my gosh, I'm never going to see my babies again. I'm not going to see anybody I love anymore. And everything that I know, the books that I loved, everything that I love is going to be gone. And that created a tremendous amount of fear. And I'll never forget laying in that bed and they're trying to get my lungs to breathe and get my heart going and all kinds of stuff. And thinking, I need to hold somebody's hand. Can somebody please hold my hand now? When you can't breathe, you can't talk. I couldn't say anything, but I could have reached out and held somebody's hand. But what happens? I started thinking about my dad and being a guy, and he would turn in his grave. I said, he's going to turn in his grave. He finds out I show weakness here. So I decided that I had to be tough. And I'll never forget this because my body actually stiffened. And I did not show fear. That is not bravery. That was weakness. I didn't allow myself to be human. And ultimately, I regretted that moment, even then. Being so afraid to show that I was human, that I needed help. And still makes me emotional, so you have to forgive me, folks. But the next thing I know, I hear my physicality was changing, so I could hear the IV drip sounding like water hitting a tin roof, like splash, splash. It was so loud. And I could look at the wall and I see the grain in the wallpaper. There's a curious aspect to that all of a sudden. There's a curiosity, like what is going on? At the same time, I have the fear. Wrestling with the fear. So it was really insane. And then I said to myself, because I didn't believe in God, I didn't believe in creator, I didn't believe in anything but books and science, I asked myself the simple question, what if creator is real? What if God is real? And then I said, well, maybe if he's real, maybe if I reach out and I pray, maybe he can reverse this chain of events, right? So I started praying and I started asking. To me, it was begging. And I said, God, if you help me, creator, if you help me, if you get me through this, I promise I'm going to be a better man. And I waited about 20 seconds. Now, 20 seconds when you can't breathe and you're dying is a long time. It feels like a real long time. And nothing happened. And then I got angry. And I went through, I guess, this grieving process. I begged, I got angry, I did everything. But I got angry and I said, Jose, what are you doing? You know there's no God. Why are you praying to something you know isn't real? And what happened was, my heart became very regular and then it stopped. And the thing is, you're hooked up to a monitor, so you can hear that beep, 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 beep. And then you hear that thing go, wee. That created a paralyzing fear, because I knew what it meant. And the crash team is doing everything they can to keep me alive. So now they're doing CPR. And I just kind of collapsed into myself. And I started thinking, I said, Jose, I had a real hard life. And you did the best you could. And I'm not quitting and I'm not giving up, because that was something that we were taught never to do. Quitting, we couldn't give up. And I said it was okay to die. Okay. No shame in this. And then my brain got out of the way. Finally. And I saw a shadow by the door. And it got really bright there. And the shadow moves in the minute I said it's okay to die. Reaches out and she touches me. The minute she touches me, I feel this tremendous sense of peace and calm. But the underpinnings of that was this incredible love. It just overwhelmed me, took away all my fear. It took away the fact that I couldn't even breathe. I could breathe. I felt so perfect. I felt fine. I never felt better in my life. Then I feel this warm breeze, and visualizing this warm breeze coming across me. And I got long hair, so I'm visualizing it blowing in the wind. And anyway, finally it lifts me up, and the next thing I know, I'm in the corner of the room, and I'm watching this event. And I'm seeing this crash team doing everything they can to save my life. I looked at me, laying in that bed, and I said, that's me and I'm dead. Then I asked a magical question. And this is one of the questions that changed part of my life, was right there. So I had these defining moments. This was the second one. That's me and I'm dead. And then the question is, but if that's me, then who am I? Who am I? Because everything that I need to do what I'm doing, I even thought that, to see, to think, to do all that, is dead in that body. So how am I doing this? And I hear a voice says to me, think of your body as if it was a car and it has 5 million miles on it, and it broke down and we can't fix it anymore. So now, Jose, you need to go and say goodbye to your body. Now I'm thinking, wow, I just said goodbye to my life. Now I got to say goodbye to my body. So I went and I'm looking at my body. And I'm going to tell everybody here something that the most powerful moment of my experience was looking at myself and for the first time in my life, thinking that I was good enough, seeing perfection in what I've been, loving who I was. That's very difficult to do in life. You're always told you're not good enough. You're not good looking enough. There's always something ugly about you, something wrong. And we don't see the perfection in who we are. Because that becomes our focal point. What's wrong with us? And I looked at myself for the first time saying, wow, what a perfect body I had. And I realized that this vessel, it was a vessel to me at that moment, had given itself up for me. It had loved me so much that it had given itself up, and here it is dead now. Spent itself completely for me. And I started to experience these, what I call defining moments, but defining moments not in the sense of you get married, you graduate university, all those things that we think are defining moments. It was the simplicity of everyday life, taking a breath, holding my little brother's hand, hugging me, someone, a simple kiss on a cheek, seeing the sky, hearing birds, watching the sun rise. And in that moment, this is very important for everybody out there, I realized what mattered in life and how I lived and missed it because I was worried about money. I was worried about things. I was worried about acquiring stuff. And then here I am, all those things, none of that could come with me. The only thing that could come with us are memories, and only good memories. And I'm having this experience of all these beautiful memories that were so simplistic, and a realization that I had missed life. And I was too late. And I hear the voice say, we got to keep going, and then keep going. And it's incredible because David was talking about black holes. So I see like this black hole in front of me. And I walk into it and I fall, and I feel like something tearing off of me. Land on the bottom, hear the voice say, you got to keep going. There's another black hole in front of me. I fall in there. Same thing happens. I feel that. It's the only time I felt any discomfort. And I finally wind up, when I hit bottom, if you visualize a ball, I'm right in the center of it floating. These colors are all around me, only color. The color's moving and it's alive and it's talking to me. There's like a million voices and I just hear that chatter. All these voices talking to me at the same time, but there's comprehension. I'm understanding what's being said. And I'm being drawn to the color, or the color's moving towards me, I don't know which. Eventually wind up in the color, I become the color. And when I become the color, I experience what it was to be red, yellow, green, all these colors. And there's where I learned to paint. I was being told how to start. Take a canvas, paint in black first, because that's the way the universe is. That's the way this reality that you exist in is. In that emptiness, in that blackness that you see is everything that you need to make everything you know. So it gave me an example, like look in the sky at night, where you see the stars and where you see the blackness. In that blackness is everything that's necessary to make these stars, to make everything we know. And it's a fact. And a simple analogy is going into a room that's pitch black and you look inside and there's nothing there. Turn a light on and all of a sudden you see all the furniture in that room is full. That's exactly what it was explaining to me. It's what that empty space is. So it told me there's no such thing as empty space. So because of that, I could never be alone. And then it explained to me that I was being torn off for my bad experiences. They couldn't move with me into the space that I was going to. So I moved through the colors. I wind up in another space, what I would call heaven. And what I see is this beautiful forest and these mountains. And, you know, I grew up in the South Bronx and then I lived in Florida. So it wasn't what I was used to seeing, but it was breathtaking. And then I had the experience of merging whatever I got near, I became. So if I got near a tree, I became the tree. If I got near a stone, I became the stone. If it was a bird, I became the bird. And I experienced a very profound sense of oneness. And I wanted to go up to the top of the mountain, and I go up. And one of the things that happens is when I get in there, a voice says to me, I asked about my kids, and I hear a voice say, don't worry, you can see them from here. Gave me great peace. And then I said, I'm flying. And they said, well, that's normal here. So everything became normalized at that point in the journey. Went up to the top of the mountain. I looked to my right, I could see the sun. Looked to my left, there's a beautiful ocean and cove. Look back to the sun and I could see it like I'm looking through a telescope. I could see flares coming out of it and all that. Breathtaking. I could feel that warm air coming from there. And even the science mind, it was still a little bit there. And it said, oh, this warm air is giving me this lift. It's allowing me to fly here. Then I looked back to the left and I decided I want to go there because I saw a man in the water. And I go down to see where this man is. And when I get there, he turns around. And that man is my father. And first thoughts in my head are, oh my gosh, I'm going to be able to do here in death what I couldn't do in life. And there was a tremendous peace that came around it. And I looked at my dad and he looked at me. We exchanged words, but not the way I'm doing that now. I could just hear him in my head. And I became aware that he did love me, that he cared. And I said the same thing to him. And the first time I said I loved him was in that space. And then the most magical moment was going to happen. I was going to be able to hug my dad. Something that I regretted because when my father passed 5 years earlier, I had to disconnect him off of life support. And I always felt guilty because of the way we grew up. I felt like I quit for him. I didn't give him a chance. I didn't get the opportunity to fight. There was a lot of guilt and shame around that. I really struggled for the 5 years with death. And I could never make peace with it. So here I am. And when I hugged my dad, I became my dad. And I lived his life in a few seconds. And I experienced the whys and the why nots, why he was the way he was, why he couldn't express his emotions, why he couldn't show his love. And forgiveness happens. And it happens at two levels. It happens at a level where I forgive him and he forgives me. More importantly, it was about me forgiving Jose, because we blame ourselves for so many things. Not of our doing. And when I forgave myself, I felt this sense of freedom that I still feel to this day. This event happened 23 years ago. And that hug lasted like a few seconds, but it felt like forever. There was an eternity there. And my dad looked at me, he said, Jose, you gotta go back. And I'm looking at my dad, I said, no, I don't wanna go back. In fact, I said, no way, Jose. And he looked at me again and he said, no, you gotta go back. And we had that exchange for a little bit. And I felt a tug in my chest and something pulling me from the back. Wind up in my body, open my eyes, and I see the doctor. She was doing CPR, the compressions. And I think she got surprised when she saw me and she kind of leaned back. Then I went back to my dad and I'm back in the scene. And I'm looking at my father. And we're still having this debate. No, You gotta go. No, I don't want to go. Then he looked at me and said, Jose, let's make a deal. That was one thing about my father, was always making deals. So I listened to him and I said, okay, Dad, what's the deal? And he said, I promise. If your time comes, I'm going to come and get you. That was the most incredible deal that I've ever heard in that moment. So I took it. I said, okay, accept the deal. The minute I said I was good with that, I feel that pressure, tug, and that pull, and I was back in body. And at that time, when I came back, they had stabilized me. I was intubated, and two things happened instantly. The first thought was I such a bad person that I just got kicked out of heaven? Second was I felt being inside this body again. I felt confined. I didn't have that experience of oneness that I was having over there, where now everything was separate from me again. Over there, everything is a part of me. And I was in hospital for 3 months, struggled a long time. About 7 weeks after I was intubated for 6 weeks, when they finally, I was able to talk a little bit. I remember telling my cardiologist, I said, you know what? I think I went somewhere, and that's all I had to say. The guy looked at me and said, no. Brain is still alive for 2 minutes after your heart stops, and DMT and all these drugs we're giving you. So basically, he was telling me that that was a non-experience, that was all in my head, drug induced. Didn't feel right. I decided not to talk about it again, so I never mentioned anything about an experience. So I go, when I get out of there and I could finally go to work, took about 6 months before I could get out of the house. I went to seek mental health. I thought my mind was broken because I had that experience, and I couldn't stop thinking about my near-death experience ever. It was like 50 times a day. That thought was there, that thought was there, that thought was there. Thought colors were there, all that was there. What am I going to do? So I went to seek help because I thought I was mentally ill. And I went to see a mental health professional. And I saw 5 mental health professionals in all. And the first 3 couldn't help me. They did help me. One of them did help me with one problem. So when I left the hospital, I was addicted to multiple drugs. So it took 3 years to get weaned off the drugs and to become clean. So I've been clean since 2003. But that was a difficult journey in itself, getting off the drugs, being addicted, stuff like that. It's not what people think. It's not like you want to do it. It's a lot of times beyond your control. But anyway, I finally got free of that. And I was with my 4th mental health professional, and I'll never forget this because she did something that she said she wasn't supposed to do. So she sat right next to me and she took my hand. When she took my hand, I was right back in that bed, Sean, and reliving that moment where I had to decide if I could hold somebody's hand or not, if I was going to be brave enough to do that. And I was able to tell the story that I just shared with you for the first time in my life. Now, my family all knew I died, but I couldn't share the story with them. I couldn't say anything to anybody about this because they would think I'm crazy. But I was so science-minded and so anti-spirit and all that. Now I'm thinking spirit. I'm thinking about all these things that I've never talked about before. You know, and my kids are thinking there's something wrong with my dad. He's a little off. He's talking about spirit. He never talks about that. But anyway, she made life easy for me. And she said to me this, and this is very powerful. It's about belief. She said to me, Jose, what do you want to believe? Because when I was dying, thinking like an engineer, I thought I was going to be shut off like a light bulb and everything would turn dark. And I would just become nothing. Or you had the experience, your father was with you, and he said to you, Jose, your time comes, I'm going to come get you. What do you want to believe? And when she put it like that, it was such a no-brainer. Do I want to believe in nothing, or do I want to believe that my dad is going to take me home? It's so easy for me to believe my dad is going to take me home now. And I expect that. I know when my day comes to move, he's going to move with me. Take me. And there's such beauty and grace in that. And there's something so simple about it. And I think in life, because of the experiences that we have, we harden ourselves and we put up all these barriers and these walls around us to protect us. And all we're doing is locking ourselves into a box. And then I physically couldn't breathe, but we build the boxes so tight that we can't breathe. We begin to lose the magic of life. Grace that it is to have this opportunity. And part of my experience taught me that Creator or God or whatever you believe in made us in a way that we are filled with love. We are made to love. And our job is to empty that tank out when we're here. Leave all that here. Because that means we're going to take some amazing memories back with us. And when we talk about love, I'm talking about all kinds of love. Not only like a relationship with partner and stuff like that. I'm talking about all kinds of love. We love a pet, we could love a house, we could love a car, we could love the sky, we could love the sea. We could love so many things. That's our job, to leave all that here. Because that means when I'm going to go home, I'm going to take all those loving memories with me. That was a big change in my life. Made me from a person that was very hard and very practical, very afraid to love, very afraid to show fear, I couldn't cry, I couldn't do anything. When I express emotion, it's freeing. It makes me feel free. Even when I share my story and I get very emotional, it's helping me in so many magical ways to be able to do that. In particular, the way I grew up, being a man and being told, no, you can't cry, you can't do that, you can't ever do that. Now just saying that's my humanity. That's just me being a human being. And just because I'm a guy doesn't mean I can't feel. And I think that's what I want to share with the world, that we all have this capacity to share, and we all have this grace to love, and we're all gifted with the same thing. I don't care what we look like. We all have the same gift. And that's that capacity to be loving and caring and kind. We always have a choice. And we all have to live with that choice. And we're making choices every minute, every day. And sometimes there's somebody in the street that I could give $5 to that I don't need. And if I make a choice to give it, it's going to make me feel good. If I don't, I think about it and say, why didn't I give that guy that $5 I didn't need? And whether he's going to use it for drugs or whatever, that's not on me. That's not on me. Being kind is. Being loving is. And I think that's what life is. It's just a very simple thing. Nothing complex about life.
Your story is so deeply emotionally moving, especially the way you tell it, Jose, and I can see how it inspires others, especially in recovery, to heal. And I know that's been a long journey unfolding, but this new generation of students, and I teach a lot of Gen Zers, are very open to quitting all alcohol, cigarettes, and all things that are bad for their health, and being sober. And so what do you have to say about the near-death experience as a healing tool from inner immersion and to that population of students who are very open.
Yeah, well, the thing is that when you die, you don't learn anything about dying. You only learn about life, the first thing. So it gave me, how beautiful, how amazing this place was where we went. Doesn't take any light away from where I am now. This is a beautiful place. It's a special place. It's our place. And there's so much grace and beauty here. And just to try to see it and appreciate it. I like to look at it sometimes from a more spatial perspective. And, I'm still a little science-minded. So if it took 13.8 billion years to make this universe, it took that long to make this planet what it needed to be so that we could be here. Perfect for us. It has everything we need. So I look at that as a tremendous loving, something very loving had to be able to be working on something for so long to make it like that for us. It took 13 billion years to make this for us, a place that we can live in. And the Earth is 5 billion years old. It's very science-based and stuff like that. I get it. But even if it's only 5 billion years, imagine working on something that long so that we can live on it. That's, to me, the gift of the creator of God. Whatever you. And then the breath that gives us this life, that spark. And you guys were talking about storytelling before. It's important for us to tell our story. It validates who we are. It says we're here. It acknowledges our presence. Most of us don't have a chance to tell our story. We're taught to be quiet, taught to shut up, taught to not speak truth because it might set somebody else off, or it might, so we hide. And in what I've been doing, and I've been doing this for a long time, since 2008, is I discovered the magic of everybody's story, the beauty of who they are. You don't see that. Too busy. We can't see the beauty in ourselves, so how are we going to see it in somebody else? That is what my goal is, to help people to understand who they are. There's so much more than this physical body. But this physical body is also special, no matter what it looks like. So when we look in the mirror, see what's good about you. Don't see what's bad, and don't listen to all those voices and all that chatter that are always telling you that good enough. You are good enough. I think we need to begin to honor the opportunity that we have to be here. It's a blessing. And now I live my life every day with that thought. What magical moments am I going to create today? But those are the memories I'm going to take. And if we all start thinking like that, and it's a little shift. I look at us as little creators, little gods. And I'm not saying that from an egotistical space. We have the capacity to make things, to do things. And we have that every second that's in front of me. So right now I can make a decision to do A. Maybe I don't do it. Then I got another opportunity in 5 minutes, in 10 minutes, in 20 minutes. Those opportunities are always in front of us. So the gift that Creator gives us, of God, is an opportunity to always shift and change. Now it's up to me. Same way we created all this equipment that we're using to do this program, our homes, everything we have, we make. We have this capacity to make and do and create. So why don't we create a better place? And it's just a little shift in the way we think. There's so many people doing good work out there. You never hear about them. You only hear what goes wrong. Oh, this happened and that happened. And they put the news on and it looks like the world's ending. But I'm going to tell you, there's so many people that I know that are doing good, that are making a difference in so many people's lives, like Trisha, like Sean, like so many, everybody here. We're all trying to do our little bit. And that's all we got to do, a little bit. We don't have to do it all. And that's one of the things we have to realize. We think we have to make a big change. No, any little thing that you could do is going to become the big change.
Love what
Where
you say.
little changes become big changes.
I love what you say about being closer to God as you create. Like that's part of that. And creation is a beautiful, powerful tool that we have, both by imagining. I ask my students to imagine the world that they want to live in, one that's more sustainable, where human beings are in a beautiful collaboration with nature instead of abusing it. And so I know you speak to these topics as well as being in balance, being in harmony between that masculine and feminine principle. And did that evolve for you, or was that out of your near-death experience or the art, or how did that vision evolve for you of healing?
It was an awareness that I gained, and in the other space, right? I was always thinking that I had to be a man, and a man meant A, B, and C only. And I never honored that I was half of my mother. I never honored, in my culture, we talk about our 7 grandmothers and things like that. It's very important. And I never honored that side because the way we grow up thinking that we're supposed to be in this way. And it's okay to be a little soft. It's okay to be emotional. It's okay. And I think if we were all a little more emotional, the world would be a little different. We could express what we feel. I need somebody to hold my hand. It's not a big deal. But in my world where I grew up, that would be you're weak. And if you're weak, who has to be with you? And it's just that mindset that has been going on for so long that, and I think David was talking about that shift. There has to be a shift. We need to know what we are and that it's okay to feel. And when I say that, I mean, sometimes we're going to feel bad. It's okay to feel bad. Sometimes things hurt us. Somebody may not know, they'll say something that hurts you. Some will do it maliciously. But it's okay to be hurt, is what I'm saying. Now, what you do with that is what changes everything. But when I get hurt, I want to understand why. Because if I understand why, then when they say it again, it won't hurt me. So I guess what I'm saying is we can learn from everything. And sometimes things that go away from us, that we lose, that we think are lost, are never really lost in my mind anymore. But we still have that perception that we lose them. But one thing I know, there's always teachings. Always something we learn. And I think it's important to keep learning. And when I talk about stories, I want you to understand that my story started in the beginning of time. It didn't start now, not when I was born. It started with my parents, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, and it keeps going back to the beginning. So my story, I came in chapter 100, 1000. That's my story. And you're writing a story every day. You're making a movie every day. Movie is your life. Story is what you do in it. You're writing that every day. And every day we can change, we can shift, we can move. And if I'm doing something that's not making me feel good, in an hour from now, I can make a decision to change. And that's kind of like what we teach when we're working in these rehab centers with the vulnerable sector, with people that are at risk, a lot of suicidal ideologies and things like that. I work a lot with, with people that a lot of people won't spend a second to look at them. They don't exist. They're the scum of the earth. They're worthless. They have no value. And I see value in them. I see humanity. I see the same dreams that I had when I was 7 and 8. Same dreams that you have, they have. They didn't grow up and said, I'm going to be a drug addict. I'm going to be homeless. I'm going to be this. I'm going to be that. They grew up with the same dreams we have. And it's just helping them find it because they lost something. And all we want to do is help them a little bit because that's all you need to do. The rest they're going to do. So I think that to answer your question, the shift came when I had the experience and understanding how valuable and important we are. But before that, I didn't care. I didn't care about other people. I didn't care. I cared about my little tight circle. And David was talking about that circle, and that's all I cared about. It's all that mattered. It's all that mattered. And not all that matters. Because they're affected, they're touched by everything that's like the outer rings. And if you look at it from, just look at it spatially, I'm going back to science here because I love science. We're all moving around the sun. Moon moves around. If we all didn't move around the sun the way we did, we wouldn't be here. All those rings, all those outer circles have relevance and impact the inner circles. And we just have to be aware that that is where that connectivity is. I feel independent of everything. This computer is a few feet in front of me. But what I know is that it's really not. That space, that emptiness, there. I think that's what allows us to be magical. And the experience of dying really taught me about life and made me love life. And I'm going to share a little experience with you. When I was growing up, one of my first jobs was frying chicken at KFC. And everybody was making fun of me. Oh, Jose, you can't be, you're going to go to university, you're going to do this. How are you flipping frying chicken? And they made me feel a little ashamed of it. So I used to hide it. I didn't want to talk about it. But when I came back from my experience of dying, it was so like, wow, Jose, you know how many people you served every time they went home and they took that bucket? Every time they came in and they're going to feed their family, they're going to feed themselves. You're helping these people. And if it makes me feel empowered, I don't care what you do. It matters. Flipping burgers matters. Somebody's going to go in there and buy it. Maybe even feed their family. That's what you're helping to do. So don't look at it as something like, oh gosh, it's such a low job. Only a person that is not very bright to do this. You're the brightest person in the world. Just get joy from what you do. So many ways to find joy in what we do. And stop minimizing what we do matters and it's important. And as human beings, we do matter. You're muted.
I think that is a perfect place to end. Just that line, you matter. So many people are dying to hear those very words. They hear it from no one all day long, and maybe for years, that they matter, and there's healing in that. And your story is just so deeply moving. I cry every time I hear it. So thank you for sharing what you do, and thank you for the work that you're doing. So I really encourage everyone. I'm going to put a link to Jose's website in the chat below, and especially anyone in the mental health professions, get in touch with Jose and find out how his experience and these near-death experiences can help people heal. It's fascinating, your journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Trish. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, everyone.